All right, I think we are live here. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining again for another one of our panels and discussions with the community. Today, we're talking about something really exciting in Web3 and something personally I find super interesting. I've always been a real fan of watching what's going on in game development and watching sort of the innovations that happen there and these sort of experiments with the way people come together and collaborate or compete or how motivations happen. And I think in Web3, there's just really cool opportunities to mix that with all these new and interesting building blocks. And the Web3 gaming community has been working on that for a while, and we've learned a lot, and there's a lot that we still need to do. And so today I'm joined with some folks that are kind of leading that charge, and I think have some really great background and probably some really great perspectives on where we're going. In a lot of ways, 2022 appeared to me, and I'll kind of want to pick the brains of the people that have joined me, but it appeared to me a lot like a setup year. There was a lot of development and work that went on behind the scenes to enable us to do some really amazing things with Web3 games. And I think 2023 might be a banner year. And I don't want to be saying that again in 2024. So hopefully we can uncover what that might look like. So we're going to explore all of that and what happened in 2022, what's coming in 2023, and what to be excited about. I'm joined by 4 awesome folks today who are all over the world joining at different times. And so I'll let them introduce themselves. It's always better than what I could do. So maybe we just go around the circle here clockwise and start with you, Kostas.
Hello, my name is Kostas. I've been in the Web3 gaming space since mid-2021, so about a year and a half now. I've been a community lead. I'm still am. I've joined here today through a community initiative we have started in Game 7, where we go over games that are in any stage of their development, demo, pre-alpha, alpha, beta, even live, and we communicate with their developing teams to provide qualitative feedback in order to help in any way we can, basically, developers around the space. I've also been deep in gaming research, from game mechanics and game engines to game economies. And I think that's about it.
Awesome. So just moving forward to Tansan.
Hey, hi, I'm Tansan. So I just joined the Web3 scene, the NFTs scene, earlier this year, and I've been really working this last year to deepen my knowledge across just every aspect that I can, from like a builder to like a degen trader. So we've been working on this game called Gem Spirits with under Tableland's pilot program, and like it's basically a Web3 virtual pet. We want to be able to raise a pet, which is an NFT, and be able to evolve it and then actually eventually battle with it and so on. It's kind of similar to like your 90s like virtual pets, and that's the idea. So I'm here today with Soyjoy, who's my teammate, who's also working on the pets with me and doing the art direction and whatnot.
Sorry, I was on mute, but why don't we break the clockwise and jump over to Soyjoy then?
Yeah, cool. That's what I thought you were saying. Yeah, cool. My name's Soyjoy. I'm working with Tansan, as he pretty much explained, on the Gem Spirits product, coming from the Tableland's pilot program. Background is more on the art side, but also pretty familiar with the product space as well. And I also joined NFTs, the NFT space earlier this year after spending quite a bit of time in DeFi. And yeah, we're always discussing about building some kind of product or doing something creative in the space, and we landed in in the gaming sphere. And yeah, just excited to see the developments and to talk today about a little bit about where we're going and what we can expect. So yeah, super excited.
Yeah, Anna.
Hey, I'm Anna. I'm from Nineverse. It's a studio. We are building out KittyKart. We're using Tableland as to achieve our customizable carts in our. It's a FPS Mario Kart style racing game. I'm also one of the co-founders of Culture DAO. We're building out a generative AI pipeline, which we're going to turn that into a gaming engine. Is the idea. But I've been in crypto for a long time. I think I bought my first Bitcoins in like 2014, and just been following DeFi. And then my background is more engineering, data science, computational science. And then I was working in pharma, and I left to come to Web3 about, I think, October of last year.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, why don't I start right there? Well, you're all warmed up, Anna. I think I'd love to actually hear a little bit more about the origin of Nineverse, given your background. Why start building Web3 games? What was the draw there, and how did you kind of go down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, so I think well, it started out as like just something, you know, I'd graduated my master's program, and I started working in pharma and it was right before the pandemic broke out. And so I'd moved to Connecticut from Michigan, and then pandemic, and I didn't know anybody there. So I was just kind of like sitting at home, and I made some friends via like just being interested in crypto, like in Telegram rooms. And we wanted to do like a side project, and just to kind of take our mind off things. And so we started discussing like what would we do, what would we build. I was really interested in AI at the time too. I was starting to co-found Culture DAO, and that's more centered around AI. And so we kind of came up with like, okay, like let's pick a Web3 native character and let's do a virtual beings project in a DAO. And then, you know, there's a talk around the metaverse, and my co-founder Ace, he's an artist, and he's kind of centered his career around like doing exhibits and what the metaverse would look like. And he was just saying, you know, gaming is kind of the first entryway into that. It's like the onboarding to it. So we were like, all right, well, like what if we made a game? Just something, you know, passion side project. And then it kind of really took off, and with like our community, and I just kind of fell in love with like doing the project. And so we formed the studio around it. And but yeah, that's kind of really it. It was much more like this naturally kind of just progressed into this. It wasn't like a major plan. It was just, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. That kind of weaves into a question I had for the Gem Spirits team, Tansan and Soyjoy. One thing I was noticing, so you know, that like Gem Spirits is a good example of like brand new project. We kind of watched it go from just an idea to actually a working concept. But one of the things I noticed that you all do as well is kind of build the tooling beneath. And that's something that I think everybody on this call has experience with, sort of recognizing the thing they want to do doesn't quite have the tools ready to do it. And so it sort of speaks a lot to the broader technology stack that you were able to build something so quickly. Like I think Gem Spirits, when we saw it as just an idea to actually having a working concept, was actually just like weeks, right? So that speaks a lot to like what you're able to do now, but you still build tools to do pieces of it. What are your thoughts on the Web3 sort of game development stack and the maturity and the readiness for people to jump in and build things? How much is missing and how much is like ready for new developers just to pick up and put building blocks together?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the short answer is that it's still quite early. There are a lot of things that you still have to build yourself to kind of get going. And I can see like a lot of more beginners shooting themselves in the foot a lot just because they might not have like some reference point on how something should be developed. Like just for example, using Tableland as an example, it's quite a bleeding edge technology and it's great. I believe in the future and everything, but like for someone to go from NoSQL to learning SQL on a decentralized blockchain, it's like you have to really shift thinking, and they don't have like a reference point to kind of fall back on either or how to think about it. So, I mean, even if they did, they still have to learn how to build those tools to kind of get them going. And I mean, I ended up building something for myself to kind of move faster, and I think you guys are working on something like that too. But I think we probably need like another year's worth of like just tool development and to help those onboarding and operations and whatnot.
Okay, so you're anti my thesis that 2023 will be the banner year for really rapid game development releases, usability. You think we have a bit more to go?
Not necessarily. It depends on how fast these things get picked up too, right? Because as soon as the developers pick it up, it goes like real fast too. Like people just keep building on top of each other's things, and then more and more it just like spreads like fire. And I mean, I've seen that happen a lot with like early days of front end web and in JavaScript and whatnot. So it could happen still. I'm pretty bullish on it still.
Okay, good. Okay. And then, all right, that's another great segue to Kostas, because I think you have a really, so I got familiar with some of what you were up to from one of your Game 7 collaborators, and I think you have an interesting sort of seat where you're seeing games come through. So I heard about the playtesting initiative and the work going on there to like give game developers rapid feedback on actually how playable their games are. Like, what are you experiencing as a game player? And could you when I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, that's like so obvious that Web3 game developers need that. Like if you think of any like big game development house, they have armies of people that sort of do that for them. And I think it might have been an easily missed, really important contribution to the space. Could you speak a moment about play testing and what you're seeing, like the types of feedback you commonly have to give, and like the importance of that for a game developer to go through? I think it's so interesting.
So basically, any gaming project, even Web 2, Web 3, doesn't matter, goes through that process of playtesting or game testing or whatever name you want to give it. But in Web3 space especially, we didn't have any companies doing that. Like in traditional gaming, we did not have any large communities that contribute, in form of DAOs or in other form with playtesting feedback. We kind of seen a lot of analysis and reports around a game's potential and the game's economy, but not its true gameplay. So we kind of want to give our opinion, apart from chains, apart from engines, apart from genres in gaming, how a Web3 game in its core, in its gameplay core, could improve. Of course, we have long-time gamers, we have game devs, we have people that know gaming very well, and they are also Web3 natives in one way or another. And that also give us a better understanding in some feedback where we want to give in terms of, does this feature or does this game fit in Web3? What gameplay loops could improve from the Web3 features that you have added as a game developer? Things like these that, like you said, went widely unnoticed in 2022 and 2021. And that's how it started. We are experimenting to see how we could improve the process, but so far it's been very nice. We have been communicating very well with the game developers that have participated, And if anyone hears it and needs game testing for their games, doesn't matter how early the game is, we kind of take into account, even if it's demo, because many times, especially in Web3, because we are building in the open and we're building with our communities, people are very reluctant to release something because the feedback can be brutal sometimes if something is early and not ready. And in the public, in Web3, because everything is so public, it can be multiplied in comparison to traditional gaming. So it doesn't matter how early a game is. I could even argue that the earlier a gaming project is, the better, because that's easier to the developer to make more drastic changes.
Yeah. And so if people are interested, we messaged out on a couple of the channels, but join the Game 7 Discord. Is that the best? Is that the best?
They can join the Game 7 Discord. They can look for the links that we. I mean, if you ask for it, the Playtesting initiative, believe me, I'm going to track it down.
Cool. I think I saw also you're looking for potentially more testers. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, you can never have enough feedback. And if someone is experienced, has been involved with esports, has done QA, or is generally a passionate gamer or game developer, they are always welcome to contribute to the initiative and help like others in the space. Mainly, they can also do it for research purposes, like see where other developers are in their timelines and how do they go about for many different processes during game development.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, that I think that puts you in such a good seat to speak to some of the other things. You already touched on it, trends and patterns of game development that might have emerged or matured in 2021. And so we'll come back to that a bit. I wanted to touch on some specific ones and get all of your feedback just around what's happening and what innovations there were and kind of where it's going. And the first one I think is maybe the most talked about topic in Web3 games outside of Web3 game developers, sort of by the broader community. I think this one is talked about a lot, which is on-chain games. And I feel like 2021 was like a huge year for on-chain game sort of momentum, like loot crashed onto the scene. And I was following SupDrive for quite a while and seeing what was going to happen there. And now Dark Forest and Conquest are sort of holding that up. I suspect Limitbreak is actually trying to innovate some things there, though I admittedly have to go deeper into what exactly their innovations are going to be, and I suspect they're more hybrid than purely on chain. But I'm curious if any of you know and can speak to that. And actually, the Game 7 DAO has a really great ecosystem report that they put out. And in that, it sort of called out this more nuanced sort of thinking that game developers have about what should be on chain, what shouldn't, and for new game developers, how to navigate that. But just sort of an open question to all of you, what's happening with on-chain games? Where are we? Are there exciting innovations still happening or still to come there? Or has the game development ecosystem in Web3 sort of splintered or come to any consensus, or is there new directions that are more interesting? On-chain games, where are we at?
I'm pretty opinionated about it, but at the same time, I'm pretty new to this space relatively.
Yeah.
I'm not really convinced on-chain gaming is the future. I think it has to be hybrid. I mean, I've definitely seen some really positive cases of on-chain gaming. And when I first came onto the scene this year, like Etherworks was like a primary example, which I thought was really cool. But something that's more hybrid that I thought made more sense in terms of like just reaching more people is Step In, the one where you earn to move. Basically, you can walk more, and then you can like earn shoes, right? And I thought that was like, I mean, I had regular normal people just asking me about that, and I never knew that they were into crypto. And so I thought it was really interesting to see how that reached like a very different demographic of people. And I definitely think you have to have like some kind of hybrid model to be able to reach that. Because if it's just purely on chain, it's kind of only inclusive of like people who understand crypto, and it's really hard to branch out further. So that's my opinion on it so far.
That's so funny that you called out that example, because I had in my mind where you were going to go. So Tansan has maybe it's your most viral tweet around kind of unraveling Goblin Town back prior to the truth reveal and everything. And I was thinking to myself how I wanted to ask you if that is a good example of a kind of game model we'll see be more successful, sort of the sort of I call it like almost choose your own adventure, or like hidden play, like hidden dynamics within an NFT or a system. And I think Step In might be like a variant of that, where there's real world interaction and thing. But yeah, is Goblin Town a game? Was Goblin Town a game? And were people playing it to discover things?
No, that was just purely a storytelling NFT thing. They just did really well in their branding.
I was just curious though, because you kind of played the game that they designed, which was there's a mystery about who's behind this thing, and there's a series of clues or breadcrumbs within it, and that's what your tweet thread is really about, is trying to unravel a bit of what those are to get you deeper into the story. It feels like a game to me.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Like from that perspective, yeah, there was definitely a very strong narrative of mystery, and they did help us. Like, it was kind of like a game in that sense, and everyone wanted to find out who it was, right? And that was an example of like where you didn't really need to have something on chain. It was just like good storytelling. But definitely like having the NFT ownership kind of really drove that craze. But I think there are some probably better examples in other projects of this happening in the future. So I think like Azuki is probably a good example, because eventually they always talk about like blurring the lines between digital and physical, right? And they released something called a PBT, which is like a physical back token where you can scan it with your phone and then eventually transfer a physical item and see it transfer on chain, right? So like having those strategic pieces, I think like they're positioned to do something more interesting within like gaming. Like maybe they can have like maybe real life art exhibits or some kind of like event in collaboration where like people can come and they can bring their wallets and like scan these locations and like achieve badges and whatnot. Kind of like a hybrid model where you can, like similar to Step In, right? Where you can really target a different demographic. So that's something I think that would be a very positive example of like potentially getting into some kind of gamification with blockchain. Maybe not exactly just building a game itself, but having elements of that to kind of tie back into the rest of their Web3 strategy.
Yeah. I really like how you position the Goblin Town thing as a game, because I remember when Tansan was drafting the thread, and we were talking about it and pulling pieces out of it, and there were a lot of things like that going on at the time. I think there was another one which was Possessed, that they had a whole bunch of these like puzzles and things that they were delivering to the community, like hidden messages and hidden in tweets and images, and people were figuring them out and getting in spaces, and it was driving that community and driving that distribution, which I think is one of the sort of benefits of this space and of the future of gaming, etc. as well, and one of the benefits. But yeah, it's really interesting. It doesn't have to be at least the what we know and see as as a traditional game today on like a console. But yeah, there's some opportunity there.
Yeah. Anna, you're obviously taking a kind of hybrid approach with your game development. What's like the feedback from the community? Is anybody concerned? Do they want more on chain, or are you looking for getting better performance in areas so you realize some things more needs to be off chain? Or how is that experience in a game developer team?
I think that games are going to move generally towards hybrid infra. I don't see like any rationale why you would want to put like logical code in the on the blockchain layer. I think that I think blockchain is a great feature for games in terms of like a payment processing and enabling like peer-to-peer marketplaces and game asset ownership. But I think that with performance wise, you could like the programming languages of like Ethereum, for example, Solidity, you can't even do like random number generation. Like that's just, why would you put it like fully on chain? And for our feedback that we get, we've never had like anyone saying like, oh, we want like the actual like game code on chain. And I don't think that that's kind of the future that we're going to move towards. I do think it's going to be hybrid because you will need like centralized studios pushing games forward. So at least that's my opinion on it. And they're going to want to control their like their code base. So yeah, I think it's going to go hybrid.
Okay. Blasting forward, the next area I wanted to get all of your thoughts on, or anyone's thoughts that wanted to jump in, is around economics. So in-game economics, I think like 2022, we really saw just recently, we saw the NFT creator royalties really go up in the air. I also feel like, and maybe I'm too disconnected from the actual games that are using it, but I feel like play to earn has sort of failed to maintain the momentum that it had a couple of years ago, really. And now we're in a bear market with on-chain transactions at sort of all-time lows, or generally pretty in the pits. How are game developers thinking about game economics, funding game development, paying developers? Like, are there new models that are emerging? Are we leaning more heavily on those existing models? What do we need to know about what's happening with economics? And maybe, Kostas, your sort of seeing so many game developers come through, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
So I would say yes, play to earn. The play to earn model has, 100% lost its steam. Has it completely failed? Perhaps. There are different variations of the play to earn model that are trying to basically turn it into something sustainable and phrase it a bit differently. I would say that we have seen a few games. Can I name projects?
Yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with. Yeah.
For example, a game on Solana. I read it. I know. I'm not sure that's pronounced like this, but Avio, play Avio or Eve.io. I call it Avio for shorts. It's a shooter game, and basically players earn from it by the ads that are placed in the in-game environment from sponsors. So it's not standard what you earn, but basically the developers create a reward pool from those ads, because the advertisers they pay for the amount of players and the amount of time spent in the game, and the amount in the players and the amount spent creates that revenue, and that revenue instead of going to the game developers, it goes straight back to the players, and it's a sustainable model. It doesn't create an obscene amount of profit for the gamer, and it does not create a steady revenue. So it would not be something like we saw with Axie, where people were playing Axie as a job. So it's not play to earn per se, but the gamers can earn something from their playing time, even if it's not substantial. It's more of a symbolic gesture. So I think there are a few other models, economic models, that are mainly focused on user-generated content, like the Sharpnel economy model. And I think it makes a lot of sense to go there. It creates much better, like Anna said, much better payment rails for the creators of that content. And basically, we have seen the rise of the free mint and the free to own movement from summer and moving forward. So we have seen that players need much less capital or no capital to enter a game right now, and that kind of takes away the most vital critique, not the vital, the most serious critique in the play to earn model, which is that players need to spend a large amount of money to enter a game, and they never actually know if they can recoup it, let alone profit from it. So we have seen many gaming projects transition from other economic models to a free-to-play, and at least at the starting level, free-to-play model, and then add financialization on top of the free-to-play gameplay.
Yeah. I'm curious, any of the other folks have thoughts on economics as project builders?
Yeah, I think so when we started building out our game, we had branded it like Play and Earn. This was like last year in October, and we really didn't like the idea of Play to Earn, because that kind of implies like you're playing this game to earn. Like that's the motivation for playing.
It's not fun. It's just earning.
Yeah, it's more gamified finance at that point. We liked Play and Earn. That was when we came that was like, to us it was more suggestion of like a collaboration between playing and earning, of like, there is that incentive is to play, but then you can also kind of be earning. It's more of a feature or an added layer. It's not necessarily your core motivation to actually picking up your controller and playing this game. And I think free to play is also like, that is the way to go. I don't think you should have barriers to entry for your users to getting into your game. I think, I don't want to like send shots fired, but like, when Axie came out and they had like a lot, you had to buy a certain number of them, and like, Ethereum gas prices are high, and so are these Axies are going up. So you had people playing like $3,000 to even start onboarding into that game at one point. And I think that's a bad strategy, because like, especially when you're like early stage, like getting into gaming, like you're trying to acquire users, like in like Web2, like people spend a lot of money on marketing to get user acquisition, to get people into the game. So if you put up barriers like buying to try your game, like it's not really, I don't think that's gonna be conducive. Especially, I think like it worked back then because there wasn't a lot of competition, but now you have a lot of bigger gaming studios coming into this space of Web3 gaming, and I don't think that's not going to be able to move forward. You can't charge thousands of dollars for somebody to actually come in your game. And I think on, the blockchain side of things, like what I think is really cool about like free to own is that it's a great, like it can be used like really well as like a user acquisition strategy, like dropping NFTs to people and like they get this cool skin and like now they'll actually go maybe try your game. And so like it can be like leverage for marketing. It can be like leverage for getting new users in. So that's kind of how I see as like a game economics is like more like, you know, allow, like put out the stuff for free. You don't want your users like kind of, again, barriers. And then also just using that with royalties and whatnot, like the peer-to-peer marketplace, like that's where developers could, you know, fund their projects, but don't add barriers.
Yeah.
Tansan, I saw you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with everything that Anna says, said about, especially about Axie Infinity. I remember like when I first came into the NFTs, I was like, oh, this looks really cool. I want to play this, and I had to like pay like $300 for Axie, and I was like, no way, I'm gonna buy that to just try it, you know. And so I actually really like Limitbreak's model where they're just like airdropping a lot of NFTs to people, and that really, I mean, it's a very easy way to just start developing like these emotional connections with your users, right? And then you can further deepen it by like adding more airdrops or like other content to kind of build into your IP and your own world. So I really like that aspect of like free to own and whatnot. I definitely don't think like some kind of set fixed collection is the way though, because the more I think about it, it's like if you have like only 10,000 like NFTs, right? And people have to buy it to play your game, that means like you'll only ever have like 10,000 players max. So it has to be like some other way to kind of, you know, expand that user demographic, right? It has to be free to some extent, and you just need to get people in and just start trying things.
Yeah, I think too, like, I think that when you're doing those airdrops, I don't know, I don't think Limitbreak is doing it where like you have to have like one of the Digidaigakus in order to play. I think that it's just like an extended skin, but I could be wrong. I like that model a lot where it's like, you know, you can start the game, you don't have to have the assets that have been either airdropped or like they're available on secondary. But like if you want them, you can go purchase them. But like, yeah, that's
Yeah, I saw a tweet the other day. I that project has come up a lot, so it sounds like we're all fans. I actually don't know a ton of under the hood what Limitbreak is actually innovating on or building, but I did see the other day that they're having a Super Bowl ad where during the ad people will be able to mint for free, I assume, a character to play in one of the games. So
right. Break Ethereum again?
Sorry, say that again.
You guys ready to break Ethereum again?
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Honestly, it might be an okay time of year to do that, given Ethereum transactions. I'm not sure though. But yeah. So okay, moving forward, I'm also really curious what all of your thoughts are on licensing. So big year on licensing conversations. Obviously, like many projects in the NFT space, go out the door with CC0, but we saw a lot of conversations happen around Proof moving Moonbirds to CC0. If you want to see like a good collection of a lot of different CC0 projects, there's a CC0 DAO, which has now formed around collecting CC0 NFTs. You can go check out their docs. And A16 published their Can't Be Evil licenses for a lot of projects to adopt. So that's all really NFT focused, but obviously a lot of overlap here. How are game developers thinking about asset licensing, game licensing? Is that a topic being covered? And yeah, what direction is the community moving? Any of you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was listening to this Twitter space, and it had Phoenix. That's a new like fund, and they were on it speaking, and they were talking about that they were really bullish on the idea around like IP licensing for certain like game assets, like DAO, like turning that into a DAO where like people will like, because I guess like game developers, they were using like racing games specifically as their example, and how like the developer, the studios would have to go get licensing for specific models of cars, and then they'd have to go like 3D model the assets. Then you had a lot of different studios that were 3D modeling the same kind of assets with the same license, and they were just saying like that would be a really cool thing to turn into a DAO where like those assets were then available, you join it, and then like you get the license to use in your game. I really like that idea. I thought that was really cool. I don't know if anyone's actually doing that or implementing it, but I think that could be like a direction the space goes in the future, because it just makes intuitive sense. But in terms of like the PFP collections and their IP licensing, we in our game, like we render some of the IP that we've purchased from Yuga Labs. Like we have a Bored Ape in there, and we've purchased like a Dead Fella. And I like that, like, you know, that IP ownership. I think that's really important. And CCO, those two are like really important because like these people are assuming these PFPs as like their digital identities, and like you want to be able to like have that go into games and like, you know, or virtual spaces or any type of platforms that people can actually be their, you know, avatar. But it's really difficult to work with collections that don't give the rights to the users, because then like you have to actually go contact the collection, try to get some type of commercial license, even render that. So I think that's an interesting topic, and I was really excited to see Moonbirds moving over to CCO, and I really like collections that do give the IP rights to their users, because I think that's going to be important for like moving forward and actually getting those NFTs and being able to use them as they were intended.
Kostas, I saw you had some thoughts.
It ties to interoperability and how much of the game assets can transfer in between games, and how it would be possible, and how it, like, the developers or the studios would basically allow it. It ties to that, and we have seen a lot of gaming projects starting to create either skins or perks for some NFT holders to their games. Since you mentioned it constantly, Limitbreak also did this for two NFT communities, or gaming NFT communities. One was Etherrocks. I cannot remember the other one. I think it was the Raft. How is it called? The 8-bit island. No, anyone? It's anyway.
Are you talking about Meme Land?
No.
Or
anyway,
Sandbox?
I'm gonna find it. No. It was a second community where they gave basically I don't remember. I think whoever holded a Genesis Digital got an Etherrock NFT, and in the other NFT community they got
I think that was the cast thing you might be talking about.
Castaways. That's the game I'm talking about. So basically, all the holders of the Digital NFTs had allow list spots to mint freely some Castaways NFTs. So that's kind of partnerships / interoperability, like bringing your Bored Ape or anything like into a game, not just playing with a skin that the game made, but playing with your Bored Ape in game, like seeing it. And the other thing that Anna mentioned, the only project that has really delved into licensing so far in Web3 successfully, I mean, is So Rare, where they raised 750 million, if I'm not mistaken, and they have purchased like NBA rights, MLB rights, and a lot of rights in a lot of football teams to basically license all the athletes in those teams. And they have been slowly building up to a steady fan base. They had almost I think they had like 300,000 or 400,000 teams made for their World Cup event, And it's interesting to note that you cannot make a second team. So at least not with some effort. It's not as easy as to changing wallets. You have to make a whole separate account. So we can easily assume that they had a few 100,000 players for that event alone. That's the only project that I can think of that has successfully integrated licensing into a great extent in the space. All other games that have, in some form, tried to license something in the real world, they have either failed or they're in development, so we haven't seen anything really yet.
Really interesting. Yeah, that so rare comment. I didn't recognize before how much they really raised to build that. That is huge, and it was actually a question I wanted that I was going to talk about later, but it seems like a good segue, which is we saw some really significant inflows of capital into Web3 games this year. Limitbreak, who we keep mentioning, they raised 200 million. Immutable X announced they have a $500 million fund. Animoca Brands, Metaverse, but I don't know. I'm of the opinion that there is no metaverse without games. They have a $2 billion fund that they announced. A16Z announced a $600 million fund. Game 7, yourselves, announced a $100 million grant pool. Where are these funds going to be spent?
Grants.
Oh yes, Polygon grants. Yeah, I mean, this is a really limited list. The numbers are astounding. Like what is available for game development now? Where are these funds going to be spent? Like, what are the big things coming? Are these funds going to be? I mean, one thing I've always heard, just to give some context here, I've always heard it's one of the hardest things to build a company around is building a new game because of the cost up front generally to all the pieces of creating a good game. And so it's at kind of like a different level than building a straight technology company where you can generally get an MVP with a couple of engineers and start showing what you're talking about. With a game, you're talking about story and design and technology and marketing and lots of work that needs to be done before you even think about getting out the door. So I understand why there would be significant capital to invest in new teams, but is that where this money's going to go? Like where does this money go? Where does this money end up next year and the year after? Like what are these projects hoping to invest in? Any thoughts?
I hope. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You go ahead.
Okay. I hope they're going towards a gaming wallet. We have been asking for it. We have been looking for it. We have not seen one yet, or at least in development, we haven't seen one. So yeah, basically, the obvious answer is gaming studios. The second option is gaming infrastructure, basically marketplaces, other platforms that enable faster development. Either, for example, one very interesting company right now is called Lattice, and they're developing a blockchain integration SDK called MUD for Onchain games, where you could easily build, instead of going from the start to build an Onchain game, you can leverage their tooling and build an Onchain game with MUD, which is pretty interesting. I think we're going to see a lot more on this side, on that side, infrastructure-wise. And basically, more gaming studios. We're going to see a lot of this. There's still, from the fundraising, I mean, the funds raising capital hasn't stopped. It has slowed down a bit, but not as much as the funding in games. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, like, with the funds that are coming, I think with the, like, from the L2 specifically, like those they're usually using that. I would say like that's gonna go towards bringing on games to their specific L2, because that's important for them to get different things built on top of them to have people actually using it. But for like from the general perspective of like fundraising, what I've noticed is that in the beginning you had like a lot of more crypto native gaming studios that had these huge raises. And then now you're seeing actually more people coming in from like the gaming industry, like veterans of that coming in and doing raises like very large that are like they're building on blockchain specifically. So I think you've now seen like a transition from like, okay, we're going to fund like, like I would say Axie or Sky Mavis was a very crypto native game company. They were building more just gamified finance. And then now you have people that are coming in from, major gaming studios that are getting like huge raises, like Gabriel Layden's raise. He was I think he was the first person to put out a mobile game. And so I think that's really cool actually to bring in industry vets, because that's going to mean better games for the space in general. And I hope that that's where it's going, is just more quality like indie dev studios that have that experience in bringing games to market.
Yeah. Cool. So we covered a lot. We're getting to the end and not a lot of time. If folks from the folks that are listening too, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in YouTube or on our Discord or tweet us, and I'll try to get them in here in the last minutes. But also I wanted to sort of touch on where we're going before we run out of time. And so I have some predictions for where the broader sort of ecosystem is going in 2023 that I'm going to try to write up and share in the typical like 2023 predictions tweets. But I'm really curious, where do you all think we're going in 2023? What are the breakthroughs or the releases that we're waiting for? What are the concepts that we're waiting to have built or that you think will be built? Or what challenges have been holding up Web3 games that you think are finally going to be solved or have been solved that get you really excited for 2023? What are your thoughts? 2023 in Web3 games, what's going to happen? Maybe start with the Gem Spirits folks. We haven't heard from you in a little bit.
I'm not really sure, to be honest. There's just so many moving pieces, and like every day something pops up in crypto and it just like changes your whole perspective on things. But the thing I'm looking forward to most is definitely Limitbreak, because they're doing some interesting things there. And I think my bet is that they're likely going to be the first one to crack the model, and basically everyone's going to think it's obvious from there. But that's just my guess.
Yeah, it's a really, I think Tansan nailed it with like it's such a fast moving space and things are changing almost every day. That being said, though, I think we're gonna see more scaffolding come in for the Web3 gaming. Those indie devs, coming in and working on stuff and building out the ecosystem. I think that's going to help aid a lot of the new sort of things that we'll see, because as we've learned in the past sort of a little while, that it's still quite early in that sense, which is going to create a higher barrier to entry. But I think what we will also see is more of those hybrids or games that are not in of Web3, taking in elements of and potentially elevating their own experiences, bringing in things or integrating NFTs and things into their games. I think that's kind of an obvious one. Maybe not. I would like to see that, because it would also bring in a lot of new folks into the space, and that would also be extremely good. So who knows? But those are some things I would like to see over the next sort of year.
And our Kostas, yeah.
We're gonna see some interesting game releases. We have already, I think that the last couple of months we have seen. Okay, maybe in November we kind of we were expecting a lot of game releases. I mean, in alphas or beta, but with the FTX debacle, November was kind of blank. But this month we have seen a resurgence in game releases, and they have some pretty interesting ones. The Beacon was an 8-bit game from Treasure DAO that caught a lot of attention. Illuvio most recently. Mighty Action Heroes released their early access yesterday, I think. So we're gonna see, and there are a lot of game projects for January and February. So we're gonna see some pretty interesting ones.
Was the Treasure DAO release, was that Beacon?
Yeah, the
Yeah, that's
Beacon.
right.
That was the name.
That one's really cool. Yes, speaking
Yeah,
of
that was fun.
yeah, I think that's kind of, I think it's gonna be a big trend in 2023 is kind of seeing publishers or like Web3 native publishers starting to come into the space. I consider Treasure DAO kind of like a decentralized publisher in a way of games. And I think that's going to be a big trend, is just kind of that them moving in. I also think, you're just going to see more indie game studios with industry vets coming in, making better games. I'm not sure of the current ones that are we're looking at this year. If you guys watch the PokeStarter Game Awards, a lot of those are in their alpha or their beta or in their private ones. I don't think that those are going to come out. Probably not next year. I mean, it takes a really long time to make a game, but I think that those will continuously update. They'll be releasing small things that people can look at. And I think another really cool trend is, it's starting kind of now, is again building alongside a game with a community. That's really cool, and I think that's different than what game development has been like in the past. Normally studios are developing these things in kind of a black box, and you get a cinematic trailer every so often, but now you actually get a whole community that's playing, token gated beta releases of it, and they're giving feedback, and it's an iterative development process that's happening out in public. I think that's really cool, and I think we'll see that trend pick up a lot in 2023.
Actually, can I just touch on that real quick, on what you said about building with the community? I have noticed that trend happening a lot within TikTok and YouTube. It's not necessarily Web3 related, but I can see more adoption of that, or just game studios kind of illustrating their journey while working with the community, and also eventually offering NFTs to kind of help early on connect them with their IP. So that's definitely I agree with you that it's definitely gonna be a trend as well.
Yeah, cool. I really like that thought too. I think outside of games, we've seen that kind of experimented with different sort of Web3 publishing platforms too, sort of collaborating with the people that are creating that then further the platform itself. And so, yeah, it seems like a really interesting model. With that, I mean, I think this is a really good place to stop, and I'm sure you all have other things to move on to. Some of you probably are slowly migrating towards your beds anyway, given the time it is. But this has been a really awesome conversation, and I've learned a lot, and I've changed my opinion on a couple of things, and I have some more homework to do. So hopefully the people listening got as much out of it as I did. But thank you all for joining, and I really hope that we can keep talking about all this, because I'm sure I have 10 times as much to learn from you all. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you.
so much.
Thanks, guys.